50 degrees below zero. Think about that for a moment. At that temperature, a cup of boiling water thrown into the air vanishes into ice crystals before it ever hits the ground. Exposed skin freezes in minutes. And in the deep forests of interior Alaska, nights like this were not rare. They were simply winter, stretching on in almost endless darkness, week after brutal week. In a place this merciless, one mistake meant death before morning. And yet, somehow, an entire people lived here, raised their children here, and survived thousands of winters exactly like this one. No electricity, no furnaces, no modern gear of any kind. Just the forest, the frozen earth, and a kind of knowledge we have almost completely forgotten today. So how did they beat a cold that could kill in minutes? The answer hides two secrets. One is buried deep beneath the ground, silently keeping them alive through the endless nights. The other is a trick with snow so strange that it sounds insane until you understand why it works. Tonight, in the dark, we uncover the survival genius of the Athabaskan people, the forgotten architects of the frozen north. To understand how they survived, you first have to understand how they lived. The Athabaskan people moved through the land in small bands, usually 20 to 40 souls, following the rhythm of the seasons along the great rivers of the interior, the Yukon, the Tanana, and others like them. In the warmer months, they traveled to fish and to hunt, but when winter closed in, they returned to settled villages near the places where their food was stored, ready to wait out the long dark together. And here is where the first secret reveals itself. It was not in the walls they raised, but in the ground beneath them. In the coldest regions, the Athabaskan did not simply build a house on top of the frozen earth. They dug down into it, sinking their winter homes 2 to 5 feet below the surface. Now, why would anyone dig into frozen ground to stay warm? Because the earth holds a quiet kind of magic. While the air above can swing wildly, plunging 50 or 60 degrees below zero in a single night, the ground deeper down stays far more stable, holding its temperature steady, no matter how savage the wind becomes. By sinking their homes into the earth, they wrapped themselves in a natural blanket of soil that never let the worst of the cold reach them. Over this sunken floor, they raised a sturdy frame of poles and spruce logs, cut straight from the forest that surrounded them. And there is something deeply moving in this choice. They did not try to conquer the wild by building tall and proud against it. Instead, they lowered themselves, humbly, into the arms of the earth itself, letting the land become their shelter and their protector. But the ground was only half the story. What they laid over the top of that frame was what truly decided whether they would live or die when night fell. Over that frame of poles, the Athabaskan built up their home, layer by careful layer. First came moss, gathered in great soft armfuls from the forest floor. Then came sod, thick squares of earth and root. Over that went sheets of bark peeled from birch and spruce trees, and finally, in many cases, hides of caribou stretched across the top. Each of these layers was simple on its own. Not one of them cost a single coin. Every piece was pulled straight from the woods that stood just beyond the door. And yet, when stacked together, moss upon sod, upon bark, upon skin, they formed a barrier against the cold that is genuinely astonishing, trapping precious warmth inside while the killing frost pressed helplessly against the outside. But the builders understood something even more clever than insulation. They knew that the greatest danger was not just cold seeping through the walls, it was cold rushing in through the door. So they did not open their homes straight to the outside. Instead, they built a long entryway, a kind of storm passage that worked like an airlock. When someone stepped inside, the frigid outdoor air was caught in that passage and stopped cold before it could ever reach the warm heart of the home. Even the windows showed this same quiet brilliance. They were made from the tanned intestines of mountain sheep, stretched thin and translucent, letting soft daylight glow through while sealing out the wind. Think about what this really means. Here was a people who took moss, bark, earth, and the humble scraps of the animals they hunted and transformed them into a shield strong enough to hold back one of the harshest climates on Earth. They turned the ordinary gifts of the forest into the very thing that kept them alive. And now, let us step through that sheltered doorway, past the cold trap, and into the warm darkness within, where the true heart of the home was quietly burning. At the center of the home burned the hearth, the beating heart of the whole shelter. But the fire did more than simply throw off flames. Stones were laid in the coals until they grew hot, then carried to the sleeping areas to radiate a gentle, lasting warmth. An ancient version of a heat-storing radiator, keeping the beds warm long into the night. And here the Athabaskan revealed another piece of hidden wisdom. The sleeping platforms were built raised up, higher than the floor of the home. Why? Because cold air always sinks to the lowest point, pooling down along the ground. By lifting the beds above that layer, the sleepers rose into warmer air, escaping the chill that settled below. Over these platforms, they spread caribou hides, thick and insulating, sealing away the cold from underneath, while women and children nestled into snug compartments built into the warmest corners. And there was one more source of heat, the simplest of all. Many bodies, gathered close in one enclosed space, breathing warmth into the air together. That closeness did more than keep them warm. It bound them into a single family, sharing the long dark as one. But survival did not end at the village. When the hunters left to follow the caribou and the moose across the frozen land, they carried their genius with them. Out on the trail, they raised double lean-tos, two simple shelters set facing each other with a fire burning in the space between, throwing heat into both at once. And when there was no time to build, they turned to that strange trick with snow, the one I promised you at the very beginning. They would pile snow into a great mound, then wait about an hour, letting the snow recrystallize and harden on its own. Then they hollowed out a tunnel into the center, carving a snug cave from within. It sounds impossible, sheltering from the cold inside the cold itself, but snow is full of trapped air, making it a remarkable insulator. And near their homes, they even dug bark-lined pits into the ground, natural freezers that kept their food preserved through the entire winter. And so we return to the two secrets from the very beginning. The secret buried in the ground was real, a home sunk deep into the earth, wrapped in the steady warmth that the soil never surrenders. And the strange trick with snow was real too, a shelter carved from the very thing that should have killed them, its trapped air holding back the cold. Neither was luck, and neither was chance. Both were wisdom, sharpened over countless winters until they became second nature. And when you look at all of it together, the sunken floors, the layers of moss and bark, the cold traps, the raised beds, the fire-warmed stones, a single truth rises to the surface. The Athabaskan people did not defeat the cold by fighting against it. They survived by understanding it, by listening to it, and by moving in harmony with it. They made allies of the earth, the snow, the moss, and the hides of the animals they honored. The cold was never their enemy to be conquered. It was a force to be understood and lived alongside. And perhaps there is a lesson in that for all of us. Sometimes true strength is not found in standing rigid against the hardships of life, but in the humility and wisdom to adapt to them. Today we have every comfort imaginable, and yet we have quietly forgotten that simple and ancient truth. So let me ask you this. Could you spend a single night in one of these sunken earthen homes, deep beneath the northern snow? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you would like to hear more stories of how ancient peoples survived against impossible odds, subscribe and stay with us. Until then, wherever you are tonight, may you rest warm and may you always sleep safely.